Welcome to the Make It So Aftershow, Super Geeks Star Trek Picard Aftershow. My name is Ross, the eyebrows of doom. I'm taking over for Carlos today, and I am wielding my very own Doom Hammer. So
if anybody gets out of line, he's got the band hammer, folks.
I have the hammer. This is my gavel, and I shall rule through the rule of absolute candor. There shall be no filter between thought and word tonight. After all, that's the name of the title. That's the name of the episode. All right, joining us once again, Travis. Glad to have you back.
Always happy to be here.
Our show's mascot, Index, a.k.a. Sunseal.
Hello, everyone.
And, of course, our wonderful producer, Justin.
Hello.
Glad to have you all here. We're a little short. People are a little scattered around in need of sleep or stuck on a train, in Carlos's case.
I don't think Carlos is stuck as he claims, but we'll talk about
either
that
way,
later.
We are here to talk Picard today. And the latest episode, which dropped yesterday, Absolute Candor. Before we get into the details of the episode, Travis, tell me what you thought of the episode as a whole.
Absolute awesome.
I loved it.
I do believe it is the strongest episode so far of the four we've seen. I personally, I guess we'll be talking about that later, so I'll just say applause. I love it.
Justin, your thoughts?
Absolutely awesome. I loved the way it just went right through the story. It wasn't slow at all. It just hopped straight on through. I mean, you were literally glued to the screen throughout the whole thing. I mean, you didn't want to turn away. It's just how it kept you engaged. I loved it. It especially the space battle, but we'll get more than that later. Yeah.
Index.
It was a pickup mission. It was.
All right, elaborate.
Well, so the episode itself does a really great, has a really good time of itself, telling a backstory to lead us into picking up a character. But we wind up picking up two anyway. And even in this, it doesn't feel like a filler episode like some other people have been saying, because there is this story, this background for us picking up one of the characters.
All right. Well, I absolutely love this episode as well. I absolutely love the insight we're getting, more insight we're getting into the Romulans. The deeper we go, the more we get, and I love it, especially as unexpected as this bit of insight was, which of course we'll get into in a little bit, and of course meeting Elnor, and of course our special guest at the end. All right, so leading into the episode itself, we start off again with a flashback. That seems to be the running theme of this series. Every episode begins with a bit of a flashback or dream.
85.
And we see Admiral Picard beam down to this planet dressed like John Hammond out of...
I thought the exact same thing.
out of Jurassic Park.
Christ, he's John Hammond.
Hat and all. He looks like he's ready for an excursion. Like he's out on an adventure.
I was like, you figure you dressed like Dixon Hill or something, but Jack Hammond? Wow, what? I wonder what that was.
Welcome to Romulan Park.
And he is immediately greeted with joy and welcome and a bit of awe from everybody there. And we get our first look at young Elnor. What was, Travis, what was your first impression of young Elnor?
Young Elnor is absolutely cute. That was my first impression, and I actually had a really... I had to laugh when the first thing he says to Picard is, "What'd you get me?" I'm just like, you kid. You kid. What'd you get me? Like, I knew he was going to win my heart over, like, immediately after that. I was right on board, like, good job, kid. Be that kid and just ask for the present. I I don't know if I would have gotten as excited as he did over a book, but I mean, different strokes for different folks, I guess.
Justin, what was your first impression of this settlement? Unmute yourself.
There we go.
There you go.
Actually, I thought, whenever we first looked into it, we thought, it was optimistic looking. It was very active. Yeah, a lot of pretty much looked like happy people, happy Romulans walking around. Lots of Federation activity. All the Federation shuttlecraft flying around. And it looked like a very busy and positive place, which drastically changed whenever we come to this active place later on in the story.
The scene changes quickly as we follow Elnor as he's running through the streets, and we are first introduced to the Kawat Malat. Son, you want to talk a bit about them?
So these are a bunch of warrior nuns, apparently. Romulan warrior nuns.
And that's not their most distinct attribute.
Well, I mean, sure, they're basically kind of like assassins to an extent. I mean, that's how they're talked about at that point, as them being like assassin warrior nuns.
Well, Picard clarifies they're not assassins.
I mean, it's Romulans. What isn't an assassin?
Soup?
I don't know. The soup's kind of deadly, especially when it's got octopus in it.
Well, Picard and Data Data would have been just fine, but Picard hated fine in reunification. So we're introduced to the Kawat Milat, as Sun said, an order of warrior nuns who dedicate themselves to the idea of absolute candor. No filter between thought and word, as a house of truth, as they call it. And they drop the truth bombs immediately when Picard shows up, where I'm blanking on her name, the head nun.
Danny?
She quotes Picard's child speech to Riker almost word for word, like she was there, which was bizarre.
He doesn't like kids.
He's uncomfortable around children because they're a hindrance to both pleasure and duty alike.
Oh man, that was
which wounds young Elnor, but and that's the explanation for the "what did you bring me?" That's what was on his mind. That's what he wanted to see. And he gives Elnor a copy of the Three Musketeers, which is a beautiful gift to a young boy, a story of adventure and action, of nobility versus corruption. Very thematic for what the Romulans were going through.
Well,
and
not only that, but where he was with these warrior nuns. I almost said warrior monks.
And, funnily enough, also a role that Picard himself has filled, in a way, as one of Reginald Barclay's Hollow programs and Hollow Pursuits, where Picard was one of the... it wasn't D'Artagnan, but... one of the characters that he fought against. And, of course, everyone's favorite beagle, Porthos.
Porthos!
Isn't that the episode where Barclay wound up making Riker the bumbling idiot of the Three Musketeers?
Yeah. Yes.
And he was like 2 feet shorter or something like that.
Yeah.
Is it time for the fight?
And there's a real rapport between Picard and young Elnor, almost a fatherly kind of impression. What did you guys think of these early interactions between Picard and Elnor? Travis, you go ahead.
All right. When it comes to Elnor and Picard's very first meeting, I fell in love with it immediately, mainly because when we were first introduced to Picard, I watched the pilot episode not too long ago, and one of the very first things he says in that is like, "I don't like kids. Keep me away from the kids, Will." You know, that kind of thing. And so seeing him here with Elnor being very affectionate, and I was like, you know, very much like, I'm very fond of you. I like, it's true, I don't really care for kids, but I'm very fond of you, Elnor. And it reminded me of The Inner Light, where he drops a line in that episode where he says at one point in his life, he never would have pictured kids in his life, but as he lives this life in the inner light, he can't picture his life without them. And so I figure that episode probably maybe influenced how he feels about Elnor here. And I actually really liked that. And I enjoyed their bonding and their sequences of them laughing and having fun with each other. Oh, I love it.
And probably the most endearing part of this entire exchange to me was where Picard and Elnor were sitting down and he was reading to him from the book. That's something my own father did with me, and something I'm looking forward to doing with my son once he's old enough to appreciate it and not running away immediately trying to play with whatever else is in his sight. He's 2 years old. He's got time.
Another thing that I think is kind of not really mentioned here, at least I've not seen it mentioned, is that this is a post-Nemesis Picard. He's lost Renee, the you know, and his brother, who was supposed to have the family to carry on the Picard name. And here he is building an affection for a child he could potentially be a father figure to, in replace of having, because he, if you remember back in Brothers, he did kind of have the same rapport with little Renee.
It was a lot more reserved in Brothers.
Well, yeah, it was also a huge role reversal too, which was humorous in itself.
Yeah.
where little Renee was supposed to be the uncle, and he was the oh good God, I can't not remember those
the nephew.
words.
That was a fun little game they were playing together.
But yeah, there was that fondness, that rapport there.
So the scene moves forward, and as it paralleled with him reading the story, then you see them fencing with sticks in the most adorable scene in any Star Trek ever. That was so heartwarming, so beautiful. And then the moment is shattered.
So sad.
Okay, before we move on from here,
yeah,
I want to talk a little bit more about the head nun talking to Picard.
Okay,
I think a lot of people actually missed this. When she is talking to Picard and they're talking about the evacuation, the way she is speaking to Picard makes it seem like this was their planet. The nuns, this was their planet, kind of like how Boreth had that Klingon monastery on it. And that they were welcoming all of the refugees onto this planet.
I haven't seen that take anywhere. That's an interesting idea, son. Very good.
I mean, and what we find out later, that makes complete sense as to who they are.
You know, I think you're onto something, because I thought that too. When she was acting, that they were already there, and then they invited the people on.
Right? Yeah.
As countercultural as the Qowat Milat are, they certainly wouldn't be very welcome in the core of the Romulan Empire. But they seem pretty formidable in their own right, that even the Tal Shiar would probably think twice before confronting them directly.
It was actually mentioned in the big Star Trek group earlier today. I was talking a bit about the Qowat Milat. I'm going to have to learn how to pronounce that. That they're very much the anti-Tal Shiar. They are the exact opposite.
Not just anti-Tal Shiar, anti-Romulan. anti-Romulan culture that is.
You could say
Everything
that.
about
Yeah.
the mainstream Romulan culture is secrets and layers of secrets around everything. And here are these warrior women, this sect of nuns who speak their mind. And think about that, how mind-blowingly countercultural that is.
Now you
to
see why they had their own
mainstream Romulan.
planet. They were considered dissidents.
Yeah.
That and they're honor bound. I mean, they're honor bound Romulans.
They had to be formidable in order to survive.
I'm gonna have to watch that scene again and see if I can pick up where Sun picked that up.
And in addition, they are directly helping with the evacuation. In addition to bringing people in, they seem to be helping in other places as well.
Yeah. I thought that was something that I didn't see a lot of people having picked up on, and I was like, that seems like a really important pin that everybody's just missed.
Well, there's a lot to take in, so it's not surprising. But yeah, that's a really, really good call. Nice one, son.
Thank you.
And then that moment of joy and happiness is shattered when Picard gets the news that Mars has been attacked. And we're brought right back to the present.
Yeah, well, we assume that's the news he got, but we can tell by the look on his face and his actions after that it's not good. And I love how they have the communicator in the ear.
Yeah.
I love how they did that. I mean, he's clearly wearing his Starfleet badge, but the communicator is in his ear. I have always wondered if that's not what they've done, because it never made sense for him to have the badge out in the open where other people around him would hear what was being said.
Yeah, it would make sense. I'm surprised we don't see or hear more about subcutaneous communications.
And wireless earbuds weren't in our heads back in the 1980s.
Except they were, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, like Uhura's entire earpiece thing was wireless.
Yeah.
That god awful thing.
The thing that looks like a honeycomb sticking out of her ear.
Yeah. That thing.
Yeah, well, shows you how much that is.
Like a giant microphone shoved them inside. Yeah, that's it.
And so we're brought back to the present. And okay, so Picard leaves, giving a heartfelt goodbye, hoping, assuring them that the mission will continue, which of course we know it will not. And we're brought forward to what?
Starfleet are a bunch of jerks.
Yeah.
I thought it was actually really that scene where he's leaving. He's being beamed up while walking away.
Yeah.
That's new.
That is new.
They showed him actually walking in that way too.
The heart melts.
If I can find it.
The heart melts when you see Elnor just behind the curtains watching as Picard's beamed away.
Mm-hmm.
Like, come back.
That scene right here.
Yeah, that's it. And then, of course, we're brought back to the present aboard the La Serena. Poor Dr. Girardi is not prepared for a deep space voyage. She did seem to join the crew a bit in a rush, but she's a little stir-crazy, a little bored, so she decides to pester Captain Rios. Justin, what did you think of this scene as a whole?
I thought it was pretty hilarious there. It showed I mean, she's probably never been into space before, so, it showed how she was just passing the time. It was actually kind of nice to have an interaction like that. You can tell that it was Jonathan Frakes that directed it, though.
Yep.
You can tell every bit of this was Frakes. There was stuff that he would have done.
I really enjoyed the interaction between her and Rios. He barely tolerating her presence as he's trying to read his book.
I mean, it's almost like in some ways it's a mirror of a Picardism to an extent.
How
Pretty
so?
much.
I swear we've seen an episode where he's been reading,
Oh,
like in the Risa stuff, when he's on Risa and he's reading and he's being annoyed by other people.
the captain's
like-
holiday.
Yeah.
He's barely tolerating other people while he's trying to read.
Well, it doesn't help that he's got his Horrigon out.
Yeah. If you want him, there was another example where he was continuously bothered. He wasn't reading; he was trying to practice his flute, and that was Fistful of Datas. The very first scene in Fistful of Datas, he keeps getting interrupted when he's trying to record his flute. And it's a golden scene. Like if you haven't seen,
Yes.
if you haven't seen it lately, I highly recommend it. It's good for a laugh.
Well, and also it's important to keep in mind that it seems like Rios spends a lot of time alone. So to have so many people on his ship at once is also in itself a disturbance.
Especially when they're not him. In the form of
Yeah,
any
we'll get more into that.
Yeah, 'cause he had the whole
Reality, the hologram straight up says like the captain prefers to keep his own company there. So
Yeah. As the interaction between Girardi and Rios comes to a close, is they seem to come to something of an understanding of each other as he describes his book, the living with the pain of life as you're conscious of death.
Now, see, here's the interesting thing. This is a human, but he seems way more Romulan than anything.
Well, that's what I was saying last week about that book. It's about living your life with passion because you know you're going to die.
Right. And now he is expounding upon it like he's read it 3 or 4 times and he's just reading it just to pass the time at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something more to Rios than just being a former Starfleet officer, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll find that out hopefully here relatively soon. But there's also something more to this doctor too that showed up at the last second.
Here's a question. What's the is there a precedent for people changing their names in Starfleet, like, or in the Federation?
I don't know if we've seen it before,
I think we have.
but I don't see why there wouldn't be.
Because the way that this guy is portrayed, he reminds me of that 1/4 Romulan dude from Drumhead.
Ooh.
that's an episode I haven't seen in a while.
Well, there was a bit of a difference there. He lied about his ancestry because he didn't want to be seen with suspicion, or he feared that his 1/4 Romulan heritage would keep him out of Starfleet.
Right, and that's part of it. That's part of it because you have that Starfleet officer still in this character that we see now in Rios. So if Rios was that officer who then changed his name to try to get back into Starfleet.
Tarses was never taken out. He stayed in thanks to Picard.
Yeah, that's too far. That's too far, George.
And I think Picard would recognize him.
Closest example I can think of to an actual name change, and I don't think this counts still, is John Harrison from Into Darkness.
Yeah, that was a violation. He was forcibly reprogrammed, quote unquote. So their interaction is interrupted by Raffi, who is furious that they aren't heading to Free Cloud and instead heading somewhere else, and drops probably the best line of the episode when
a guilt trip without even taking a starship. That was like
oh, that is such a perfect line right there. And we cut away to what appears to be Picard's study on the vineyard, a holographic reprojection of it. And that answers one of our biggest questions of a lot of the promotional material. So many scenes seem to take place in his study. A lot of us were confused that he was going back and forth from Earth. He never left Earth. Well, now we know.
Who called this last week?
Me.
There you go. It's
You
like,
got the holodeck.
Right.
Right.
Yep. Score
So
one
not only-
for the Eyebrows of Doom.
not only is this ancient ship refit to have holo emitters everywhere, it's also got its own holodeck.
And apparently an emergency hologram for any and all situations. Case in point,
Everything.
the emergency hospitality hologram. A very prim and proper Rios.
built on the programming of Neelix.
If anything, it'll make a great Star Trek ship post.
Oh,
Activate the emergency chef hologram. Activate the emergency. Now I'm drawing a blank.
Emergency diplomatic hologram.
Yes.
The emergency sanitation hologram.
Yes.
the
Activate the
emergency button pusher.
tactical hologram.
ESH, activate. I need an enema now.
Oh no!
The emergency muffin hologram.
Ooh, that's something everybody needs. We all need muffins.
We all need my mutton buttons.
The emergency
Muffin
breakfast
button.
hologram.
Yes.
Oh, so
Okay.
Picard is inspecting his office study, which is apparently separate from his quarters.
But you know what? Before we go into all of this, I have to think that even though all of these holograms are holograms, they're and have different unique personalities. I want to say they all have Rios's base personality at their core.
I think so too.
Because every single one of them is fucking obsessed with Picard. Every single one of them. Like even the hospitality program is like, this is like all of your diagrams to exact dimensions.
Interesting thought. You know, when Rios enters the holodeck and Mr. Hospitality, as the captioning calls him, deactivates, and Rios says, "I hate that fucking hospitality hologram."
Our second
I wonder
F-bomb of the series.
I wonder if that is a potential, a hint at Rios's inner psyche, perhaps. Like that's an emotion that he is perhaps burying.
That he doesn't like the Holly Jolly? Yeah.
Yeah.
So potentially the entire La Serena is a direct reflection of Rios. Interesting.
Quite possible. I mean,
In many
he's
ways-
our own crew. I mean, and it's all holograms. Yeah, I would say so.
Well, this is another one of those. This is layers of him being a Romulan more than anything, because each hologram itself is kind of a layer of his personality.
Everybody's a Romulan.
Because if he's separating his personality into different layers in the holograms, then I mean that's literally just the secrecy in layers, just like Romulan society.
I won't say the
Well,
joke.
Joe's not allowed to be on Romulan. His hair's too long.
So everyone starts filing into his study with varying emotions, rage, confusion, a little bewilderment. with Raffi questioning Picard's sanity. Why the hell are we going to? I'm forgetting the name of the system.
Vashti.
To Vashti. Why are we going to Vashti? And apparently, it's named after a warrior queen. The system. I thought I saw that from Trek Core this morning. Anyway, it makes sense if it is the home of the Qowat Malats, warrior nuns, based on a warrior queen. That'd be cool. Anyway, and we get a little insight into why he wants to go there. Not just because he's on a guilt trip, but also this might be his last chance to see the nuns and see Elnor. And of course,
My heart.
yeah. And of course, he wants to He needs a heavy. He needs someone to watch his back who can hold their own against the worst that Tal Shiar can send at them. So he's hoping to appeal one of them and recruit them.
And then we find out that he doesn't know what's gone on.
No. We find out that things have taken a real turn for the worst. Justin, you want to elaborate for us?
Yeah, so as soon as you beams down, you can already tell that the environment of the planet has changed. I mean, it went from this happy, active, busy place to this Western, dark, dreary type of environment. Because you can tell the minute it opens, everything's dirty, everything's overgrown, nothing looks clean, and there's bugs everywhere, and it's complete difference, the contrast from what it was when you first seen this place at the start of the episode.
It's not just that, it's the music of the scene has changed. The color palette has changed. There's almost no, when we first see it, there are greens everywhere. There's life.
Very elvish.
Right.
Yeah.
Right is happy.
And then when we see it again, there is no green. The plants are all dead. It's all muted browns and grays, and like it's decay is what it is.
It's become the Wild West.
Yeah, complete with segregation, with a bar that has a sign that says Romulans only.
Yeah, I've actually seen a couple of people who question that, and it's like, well, if you're paying attention to anything, when he finally goes back to the warrior nuns, they literally say the people who were left behind on the planet weren't just Romulans, it was Romulans and Terrans.
Yep.
People of Earth.
By the way, real quick, did anyone notice the nod to DS9? I don't know if this was intentional, but someone put this there. Hold on, let me pull it up.
You got my attention.
Yeah.
Right. Hang on.
But before we get too far in, Rafi tells Picard that things in the system have gone to absolute shit.
Yeah.
And that there is a warlord that currently runs the system who has scrounged together an ancient Talis warbird. And
Which they just call a bird of prey.
right.
Yeah.
And Picard responds, well, aren't the Rangers taking care of it? And it is brought up that these Rangers, whoever they are, have become spread so thin because of the problems going on that no one basically comes out here giving this bird of prey free reign.
Our first mention of the Fenris Rangers. And
which I really thought was a baseball reference, I'll be honest.
So this is a first in Star Trek that we've seen. It's always been you've got the enemy nations, the Klingons, the Romulans, the Cardassians, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
You've got kind of the criminal underworld, the syndicates, and others, and then you had things like Insurgent Maquis. But this is the first time we have. This is the first time we've seen something like
militia,
a petty warlord, and a force for good law and order that isn't Starfleet.
Mm-hmm.
The Fenris Rangers. Rangers alluding to like the Desert Rangers and other martial type. It's a really interesting concept, and one that I can't say I'm not surprised we haven't seen it in Star Trek before. But
the Rangers from Babylon 5.
Yeah.
I almost forgot that. Yeah.
But that's pretty cool. We're seeing more and more of the galaxy beyond Starfleet in the show. And I'm very, very interested to keep learning more.
I'm willing to bet that we'll probably find out more about the Fenris Rangers in the next episode, particularly because the special guest that appears in the episode, I believe reading that they are part of said Rangers. So
yeah.
We're going to be learning a bit more about them in the very near future.
The Fenris Rangers helped them install the orbital security system that only has has a cycle that the only way you can get in and out at any given time. It's a huge transport shield so that it keeps that warlord we mentioned out of the way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We learn that they're pretty unimpressed when they hear that Picard is there to beam down. And they're trying to figure out a way.
We also hear that there is a new faction within the Romulans called, I think, the Romulan Return.
The Romulan Rebirth movement.
Rebirth
There you
movement.
go.
When Picard first beams down, when the patches that they all focus on, that is the Romulan Rebirth movement. So now we have 2 Romulan factions out there. We've got the Romulan Free State, which controls the artifact, and then the Romulan Rebirth movement that's here on Vashti.
And
what else is out there?
What's interesting is a lot of people that I've seen talk about the patches go, that looks really Terran Empire, doesn't it? And I'm like, I mean, okay, first of all, one, why do they need to go back to, they don't need to go back to the mirror universe at all, whatsoever.
I don't think they are.
Two, is it some ultra impossibility that a nation of extremists would come up with a symbolism that looks like the Terran Empire all on their own? If that's an impossibility, tell me, because I think it's a possibility.
It's certainly a possibility. Any kind of authoritarian or highly militaristic state is going to choose weapons or aggressive symbols as their iconography.
Mm-hmm.
The Romulan Empire, theirs is a bird of prey swooping down on its target with 2 planets in its clutches.
Ironically, I didn't even get I didn't really get Terran Empire vibes from seeing that patch. If anything, I thought that looks like the patch from The Wall, Pink Floyd's The Wall. Just those 2 hammers, the red and white colors. I'm like, that's The Wall.
Well, what I got out of it was they're probably like Romulans. They have to have more than one faction. You had the Romulan Republic, and you had Tal Shiar. So it's probably something similar to Tal Shiar.
So we see the changes in the planet, and since it was only a couple seconds ago, the differences are very, very stark.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that fortunately hasn't seemed to change are the Qowat Milat. They
have every right to be pissed off at Picard.
Oh, yes, they do.
They have every right to be pissed off at Picard. And yet, they seem to show grace and humility through all of it.
Understanding, compassion, and perceptiveness.
Which lends into the conversation about what Picard is after on the planet when he's wanting to hire the services of the Qowat Milat because of this same perceptiveness.
The first words out of the matron's mouth, "You got old."
You didn't.
This is a house of truth.
And Picard is humble as he goes inside. He says, "I have no right to ask," but he gets right to the point. And that's when he sees a grown-up Elnor, who's just as surprised to see him. And he doesn't look like he's too happy to see him.
I think the most when that scene happens, when Elnor delivers the food to Picard, I don't think that episode itself or that scene itself right there is taken by some people to mean one thing, and oh God, what am I trying to say here?
It's not what people think it is.
Right. I see a lot of people see that as a casual, just like I'm not hungry kind of dismissal, and they don't really understand that these nuns have built their entire life on service. And after all of these years, Elnor is offering a service to Picard, food, and Picard dismisses it out of hand. And Elnor takes it as a rejection outright of him.
That's a really cool way to put it, actually.
Yeah. I was thinking something along those lines as well, but I think you illustrated it a lot better than I would have.
I've got all this knowledge. I just had to walk myself there.
Yeah.
That stuff together than I ever will be. So kudos to you for that.
Well, that's why we have so many people with different points of view on the show. It really helps to get different perspectives, and I love it.
It makes it fun.
Yes. No echo chambers here.
Hopefully Sean watches this episode and goes, holy crap, I never thought of it that way before.
And now we cut away from Vashti for a short while, and we head back to the artifact, where Soji is going over some old recordings of Ramda, where she is talking about the Romulan apocalypse, the Ganmadin, which was kind of an interesting synchronicity to a novel series called Gamadin that I read a while back. Talked to the author, great guy. And she's aligning the tarot, and that's when she gives the prophecy that is at the heart of her situation, for lack of a better word. When the chained demons hear the call of the destroyer, I think when the demons' chains are released, they will heed the call of the destroyer. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is a really old prophecy.
Yeah, she is apparently the key to releasing the demons of the galaxy to destroy all things of the Empire. It's an interesting prophecy from a race that originated from Vulcan.
This kind of makes me wonder if we're going to have the Iconians show up as a mechanical race.
That would be something, wouldn't it?
The Iconians kind of lost their grace with me after Star Trek Online. So
yeah.
I thought they did a pretty good job of what the Iconians could have been.
But then again, I'm kind of shaky on the artifact plot right now. I'm not writing it off, especially since it's very central to the plot of the story.
I agree with you, Travis. It's okay, we get it. They're in love. Fuck, move on.
Very much like, I am not going to say that Star Trek has had a perfect track record with its romances, because it's anything but. But there are just like, I can think of some relationships that this franchise has had that has been, that's been executed fine. Like Jadzia
Worf and
Worf. I love
Jadzia.
that. Yes, and even Michael Burnham and Ash Tyler, I am 100 times more interested in their relationship than I am Narek and Soji right now.
I do not want to watch Dirty Dancing on a Borg cube. Get on with it.
I have seen.
Go ahead.
I have seen others, and I kind of agree with this. It almost feels like the relationship was an idea that come together to throw in a story at the last minute. Though, wasn't really thought out all that well, and it just doesn't. I don't know. It just. I mean, even if it's supposed to be, a Romulan plot, it just doesn't feel right.
Well, it's the thing I think a lot of people are getting confused on. This isn't a romance that we're talking about here. This is
subterfuge by both parties.
Yeah. Well, we know that Narek is just trying to get close to her to learn more about who she is, where she came from, where they can find them so they can kill them.
And she's trying to use him to find out what the hell happened to the people who were assimilated on the Borg cube and why the Borg cube got cut off.
Right. And I think they're dropping some possibilities that things could become romantic. But from the very beginning, this wasn't romantic. This is just two people blowing off steam and having quote unquote fun together, fucking, just so that they could pass the time. And
Fuck buddies. Don't want
yeah,
to say
exactly.
fuck buddies.
There's nothing inherently romantic about this. This is just adults being adults, doing adult
fuck buddies.
things.
It's Star Trek now. Yeah, okay.
I would still argue that I just am not very invested in their subterfuge with each other. I get what they're trying to do, and I get, again, that it's a part of the story, but I'm just not as invested as I should be, as they want me to be, most likely.
You don't need to go board ice skating. I'm sorry.
Like,
I thought that scene was cute.
I mean, like, even, I know I'm jumping a little bit ahead. Towards the end of the episode, when Rizzo enters the quarters and she's like, "Will you just keep moving and will you speed up your attempts?" I'm just like, why are you even here in this episode right now? I was just, I'm not very.
She's annoying.
Well, she's not the most competent either, considering how her last attempt turned out.
Well, see,
Fair enough.
That's where I think we're kind of getting this red herring of sorts with the secret police of the Tal Shiar, whatever the hell they're called.
Zhat Vash.
There you go. She is Tal Shiar through and through. There's no doubt about it that the sister of Narek is Tal Shiar through and through. Why? Because she's impatient as all hell.
Mm.
And almost every other Romulan, though passionate, is very patient, except for the Tal Shiar, which always wants things done now.
And their way. Which I've seen a lot of Face of the Enemy comparisons lately, and oh man, did Troy nail it.
I'd have to watch that one again. I have to watch a lot of the Next Generation episodes again just to like get the full context of this series.
But one thing that the scene did do was finally show that there's suspicion on both sides, that Soji isn't being just strung along like some starstruck, naive young girl. She knows that Narek wants something from her. And although she's kind of intrigued by him, she's not some damsel that's being easily fooled by him. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind for her character.
This also brings up a really good question.
Yeah?
Was the interview with Rhonda publicly available or not?
Huh.
She has shown an ability to find and know things that she's not supposed to.
Exactly. And when they confront each other, the fact that Narek would then turn around and question whether she was a passenger or not on the ship that brought her supposedly immediately turns her off from any further discussion. So as much as she's poking him poking back changes the dynamic entirely.
Well, I think I can safely say that this interview was made public because she specifically calls the interview with. She explicitly says that it's a talk show, like Rinjin or something. There's absolutely no vowels in this talk show that she mentions. But yeah, I guess Romulans have talk shows now, and I don't imagine those would be classified too much.
Interesting side notes about the scene. The ship that they talk about her being on, the Ellison, being a reference to Harlan Ellison.
Harlan Ellison.
Sci-fi author of City on the Edge of Forever.
Oh. I'm rusty.
So, yeah, they're both kind of peeling away the layers of the onion here. And I think it's just one of those scenes and parts of this story that on its own and each individual episode feels like too little information of the story as a whole. But I think by the end, when it all comes together, we'll probably appreciate it a bit more. I hope.
I hope so
I
too.
hope they don't screw us with a cliffhanger. I really hope they don't screw us
They're
with a
not.
cliffhanger.
I highly
I
doubt that.
I'm like my one big hope with this, and I'm kind of nervous on this one, is that they don't try to make the stakes end of the galaxy high, if that makes any sense whatsoever. The allusion to Soji being the destroyer, if they actually connect her to her actually being connected to a potential universe ending event, I will think that they are reaching quite a bit.
I don't think it's universe ending. I think it's more cultural or
I think this is
institutional ending.
That's what I'm hoping for as well.
But
I
if
mean,
that's the
You know-
case, wouldn't that have already happened?
No, because the Tal Shiar still exists.
No. It's already happened. The 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 attack on Mars has already happened. It made the Federation withdraw and destroyed what we already had of the Romulan culture by splintering those that survived.
Yes, but the Tal Shiar still survives. The Zhat Vash is still there. I think what they're afraid of is whatever these synths are capable of doing will completely destroy the Tal Shiar and the Zhat Vash.
Remember,
But-
we had Discovery's future, where they went all the way into the future, where they had those alien machines. Now we don't know how far in the future they went, or exactly where they originated, or if they were actually truly part of control.
I don't think that's going to have anything to do with it.
Eh,
I think that whatever they're afraid of is something that is a direct threat to the Tal Shiar. And in the Empire, the Tal Shiar was the culture. They were the police of culture. And
Well, it's not just that. If I remember correctly, her interview itself said it was that the destroyer was the end of all things,
Mhm.
not just
Mhm.
Romulans or
Yeah,
anything.
that
It was
did.
the end of all things,
Yep.
of all life.
And then you had to destroy.
And in that, I hate to say this, but I kind of have to agree with Justin here that it does seem to have a correlation to the control bot in the future who's trying to destroy all life.
And
Okay.
we do know that Discovery starts in
Oh.
a post-Federation era. So, yeah.
I'm just having to wonder, are we
setting up season 3 Discovery.
No,
Well,
not setting up season 3 of Discovery. We're still in the Prime universe in an alternate timeline.
I hate you. Why'd you say that?
well, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I'd say that. I would say, though, there
I hate.
for crossovers. I've brainstormed this before. I don't think they're going to do it this early on, mind you.
Right.
But I remember specifically Patrick Stewart when he announced that he was coming back to Star Trek back in 2018, was it? Was it?
yeah,
A few days or weeks after the big announcement was made, and people were coming towards him, asking all these questions. I remember him specifically saying that he was watching Star Trek Discovery to get himself better acquainted with the universe. And that made me think to myself, Discovery takes place an entire century before Picard. Why would you need to watch that to get better acquainted with your universe? And after season 2 ended and they jump forward into the future, I'm mainly asking myself if eventually we might see Discovery in the potential 24th, 25th century mingling around with Picard. I am not going to say that is a prediction for the prediction SmackDown because I am not that bold.
What if Picard goes into the future to help Discovery?
No, please,
But-
God, no.
no,
Like,
I doubt that.
smack me down.
Anyway, we've gone on a bit of a tangent. Let's bring it back.
Yes, let's bring it back.
So after the
please.
diversion on the artifact, we come to Picard and Elnor. The first time they've spoken together at length for a while. What was her name? The head nun.
Zani.
Johnny. She tells him that her people are spread thin over Vashti, that they are doing their best to keep the peace, to protect the walk and waterways, the roads, and everything else. So they don't. There are too few who would be able to bind themselves as a starts with a Q.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can't pronounce it for the life of me. It's like
Yeah, it's like 4 syllables. Starts with a Q and it's full of consonants. Very Gaelic.
Yes. Let me see if I can pull it up on memory.
Colin Kai. Colin Kai.
Colin Kai.
I'm so bad with names. Don't ask me to name. I'm not good with names.
It is spelled. Oh, damn it! I just lost it. Hold on. It is spelled Qalankhkai.
Colin Kai.
Colin Kai. I'll roll with it. Rolls right off the tongue.
So she indicates him as he doesn't belong there. He's completed his training, but he will never be one of the sisters because he's a guy.
Yes.
But he is still trained in their ways. He follows their code, and he would be just as formidable as anyone else. So Picard goes to him and tells him a story.
She drops the second best line of the episode right there, if you ask me. She said, like, Picard says, like, he could die. And she's like, he will. But I'll be happy to see him live before that. And I was like,
sold. Absolutely
yes.
Sold.
I loved that
Shut
line.
up and take my money.
So what do you guys think of Picard's appeal to, and I'm brain farting,
Elnor?
Elnor. What did you guys think of Picard's appeal to Elnor?
Well, I thought the entire conversation that they had was brilliant. Especially when Elnor is just remembering the stories that Picard told him as a kid. And it's like, I remember you talking to me about Data and how he had a cat named Spot. And I was just like, oh, geez. Elnor, you're winning me over, buddy. Like, I'm fighting so hard. Maybe I should just let myself out on Elnor right now. Elnor has the potential to become my favorite character of this show right now. I should probably refrain from listing off my reasons why, because the reasons that go into this factor into what happens later.
Well, save it for the end then.
Yes, I'll save it for the end. But there you go.
Justin? Oh, sorry, were you finished?
No, you're finished. I'm finished.
Okay. Justin?
He's muted.
Are you there?
There you go. Yeah, I like this scene too because I mean it really kind of showed a heart to heart with them, and then the ending part of it was just it was almost real because you'd almost feel Picard's heart sink. He was so hopeful to actually get him to want to come along on this quest with him, and then whenever he got told no, yeah, he just told. Looking at the card, it was an emotional scene. It was a good thing. I gotta agree with Travis. This gotta be one of my favorite characters so far on this series.
Son, how about you?
I'm waiting for all of the Revenge of the Woke people to tell me how sexist this is. That a man can't be part of a warrior nun sect of Romulans. Honestly,
They already are.
Are they really?
They're also complaining about the warp stars. Trek Yards was crying about it the other
day. but Trek Yards isn't Revenge of the Woke.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. The big thing was I look at this whole thing and I'm like, this right here is a turnabout on some of the hypocrisy that we see in other stuff with, oh, that's sexist because it's an all-male group and women can't be in it, and then those same people are absolutely quiet when this goes on. And I think it's really, really important to poke that hole, and I'm glad Picard does that, even though it doesn't do it overtly. It pokes that hole because if someone's going to complain like that and then be absolutely silent on the turnabout, they have no argument anymore.
Yeah.
And then the scene with Elnor, you have a Picard that's reaching out after years of his own self-pity and guilt, and you have this boy who's been told since he was little he can't be a part of the group he's grown up with, and the only figure he's had hope in that would give him a family to belong to has abandoned him. And as much as we see Picard make this plea, you have the conversation from Elnor, and I don't think it's explicitly said, but you can almost feel it coming off of him when he talks to Picard, that you abandoned me. I hate you. Why would I bind myself to you when I hate you for leaving me?
Well, more than that, to him, Picard coming back, he doesn't feel that he's coming back for him. He feels that Picard is coming back because he needs something. He says it is, you only come back because I have value to you.
Yeah.
Because I have a service that you want. No, screw you.
He also straight up says, like, I can understand why you need somebody. Why do you need me?
Yes.
Like, he asks that twice, and that, I thought that really emphasized just how much grief he has been bottling inside him these past 14 years without Picard.
Which is something he really shouldn't be doing, should he?
No, probably not.
I mean, he literally lives with a group of nuns whose whole thing is being absolutely honest.
Yeah.
But you're talking about a young man full of ladies without a father figure in his life now that Picard's gone.
And it's not something that would come up in conversation necessarily either, especially if he's focused entirely on training, which he seemed to be. And taking a step back, we kind of see a bit of that discussion as well in between the head nun and Picard when she says that that because you could not save everyone, you saved none.
You saved nobody.
You saved nobody.
Made the perfect the enemy of good.
Drove that point home to him whenever she said that, and I mean, I thought that was a really good scene because you could feel the emotion that there, see the disappointment that she was displaying in Picard for what he did.
I'm sorry, but isn't that rather French? You couldn't do it your way, so you gave up.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, he his ultimatum. He gave an ultimatum to Starfleet: do it my way or I quit. Okay, bye.
Okay, quit. Surprised Pikachu face.
I mean,
They told me
I don't know how that would have surprised him. If any officer had done that to Picard, he would have said, "Get the hell out the door."
Yep.
Get off my bridge.
He had an overinflated sense of his own importance and authority.
Well, that's because
he's an admiral, but he's not Starfleet.
Well,
as often as he's
sure,
spoken.
but you also have to remember this is the guy who saved Starfleet countless times.
Sure.
Well,
so did Kirk.
You thought he was Kirk, and he was no Kirk.
Kirk got demoted.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean,
that's what Picard asked for.
No, he'd already quit by then. You can't quit and then come back?
He wanted to be reinstated with a demotion to captain.
after telling off all of Starfleet and the Federation on live holo across the galaxy.
But he didn't.
After quitting in a huff.
But he didn't tell them off.
He did.
He told the reporter off, but he was rebuking Starfleet publicly.
Yeah.
Right.
Scathingly.
Right. But one, you have a reporter who wasn't doing her job because she was poking at questions she was told repeatedly not to.
She was absolutely doing her job. Her goal was to get that story out of Picard, and she was going to do everything and anything she could to get it.
Two, it wasn't a rebuke of Starfleet itself.
Oh, yes, it was.
Yeah, it was. Yes, it was.
Because it was no longer Starfleet.
Because Starfleet wasn't Starfleet while he was in Starfleet. He just couldn't see it because his ass was in a flagship.
Anyway,
if anything, he was truth telling, and he only saw it after the fact.
Right.
Bringing things back in.
This week on a very special Super Geeks podcast.
Hey, this is podcasting. Tangents happen a lot. Love it. So Elnor rebukes him. The bird of prey is coming. They need to leave. So Picard is ready to just leave in shame. And then he does something that everybody is kind of scratching their heads about. He takes a look at the Romulan-only bar, the Romulan-only sign, casually picks it up, throws it on the ground, steps on it, says hello to everyone inside, and walks on in nonchalantly like he owns the place. I would like to know what you guys think of that scene and why he did it.
Revenge of the Woke, forced diversity. I actually really liked that. I liked that. I liked the concept. I loved the theme behind it. I can't say that it's very subtle, but I don't think it's meant to be subtle. I loved how the Romulans are just like, got some balls on you, dude. Dude who is in his early 50s and full of angry, armed to the teeth Romulans. But I love how he just gives no shits either. He just hey, did I get a drink, waiter? Just casually saying hello to everyone. And I was very much just thinking you know what? Kudos to you, Picard. You got some cojones on you for this.
See, this was actually played out in some ways a lot better than what I thought it was going to be. This was actually what what Patrick Stewart himself meant when he said tackling the themes of Brexit and the refugee crisis, both in Europe and in the UK right now. And as much as you can see it on one side of that argument, you can see it from the other side too. In many ways in the UK right now, there's the big huff from the media is that all of these white racist people don't want refugees in their territory. And from the opposite perspective is all of these people who live in the UK have seen these influx of refugees who suddenly segregate themselves and say, you can't come into this space that's been a part of their country for years.
It's a really good interpretation. I admittedly am not very familiar with what's going on in the United Kingdom. I mean, we've got our own depressing politics over here as it is. And so hearing that from you, I know that you are in Europe and probably much more familiar with it. I think that...
Should I tell him or are you going to?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
She's in the South.
I live in the middle of what still is in many parts the racist South of the U.S.
Oh, well.
So I understand.
Completely shot from the hip and
negative 20 points to Travis.
It's all right. It's all right.
One of the weird quirks of being blue in a red state.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I see this from both sides, mostly because what's being portrayed on, okay, so the Romulans are trying to keep out the Terrans that are on this planet in this little bar. This bar is their safe space, so to speak. And Picard is basically tearing down this segregation of the society, of a society that he wanted to be integrated. And I know all about integration. I live in Arkansas. We had the Little Rock Nine thing. So integration is a big thing here still.
And that bar was full of the Romulan rebirth people.
It was. So not only was it segregated by Romulans, it was Romulan extremists as well. And it's a parallel to both sides, and depending on what side you're on in that discussion of Brexit or not, you're seeing the other side portrayed by that bar. You're seeing the people who wanted to remain in Brexit having their closed off little space where they can be Remainers all and not let anybody in, because anybody who is not a Remainer is obviously some kind of racist or something, and they don't want it. And then on the opposite end, if you were a Brexiteer, or if you are a Remainer, you're seeing that group be the extremist, racist, segregationist Brexiteers, because they obviously all have to be, right? And here is Picard in the middle of this discussion kind of tearing down this segregation and saying, no.
Hi there.
Hello.
And if you notice, even when he does this, nobody really harasses him until he starts making demands. He trying to get the waiter's attention. That's when the folks actually get up to intervene, because the waiter wants to have no involvement in it. And then you have the other guy get up and go, we can move on him. I think a lot of those people there still recognize this is Picard. This is the guy who is going to help. But it's the one guy who stands up that goes, I was a senator. I believed in your speech.
Ken Kem Andrev, I believe his name is. Ken Kem Andrev.
Yeah, very, very interesting spelling. Hang on a second.
Penquemandrev.
Lowercase g, capital T.
I think that's actually a typo on CBS's part. I believe
that's my headcanon now. That's just how Romulan is spelled out in English, kind of like the weird Klingon spelling.
So he's just a Klingon operative as a Romulan.
Yeah. A former Romulan senator living in the squalor of this world.
Well,
the ship that the Wellington class transport, the Nightingale. It might or might not be the same ship, but it was of the same class and name as a ship used in the Starfleet Corps of Engineers post Voyager. It was one of Harry Kim's ships.
Yeah, there you go.
But
they don't respect him, though.
No. Well, like anyone else, they have every right to be pissed at him. He was the face of the relocation effort. He was the face of the rescue. He brought them all there with these grand promises of hope, of prosperity when they were at their weakest. And then he's gone. The promises dried up, the money dried up, and now they're all living in poverty and filth. And and here he is, the face of it all, sitting in their bar. Time to make an example.
This is actually weirdly, again, another interplay on the refugee crisis itself. because you have the people who in the European Union who want to bring in all of these refugees and say, we will help you, we will help you. And you have all of the people going, we don't have the resources to help them. What are you doing? Stop. And then all of these people come in and they're segregated away. And guess what? There's no money. So all of that, where they live suddenly becomes these giant ghetto tent city areas of refugees from different groups of different countries. And even in those segregated areas, they start segregating themselves by their country and by different tribes and all this kind of stuff. And without resources, guess what happens? They turn to villainy. They turn to creating their own ideas for bringing back what they used to have. And we see that here in this episode.
The Romulan rebirth movement. What reasons do you think Picard had to do this radical thing that he knew would likely backfire on him? He didn't think that he was just going to walk in and they weren't going to do anything about it.
Well, if these guys are meant to symbolize extremists, as Sun is suggesting, and I totally agree. I mean, one of the in our culture today, when dealing with the extremists of today, or the alt-right, or whatever you want to call these people who are very much making some very controversial decisions, promoting some very controversial lifestyles and beliefs. One of the ways I often hear of fighting it is just to tell them, I don't agree with you. You are wrong. And this might be Picard's way of just saying, hey, this is not right, guys. This is wrong. And he knows he's probably taken a big risk with it. These people, again, they've got swords and disruptors, and he's got nothing. But it's his. I see it as him making a bit of a statement in his final moments on this planet, just like, I am here. I want to make things right, but I can't make things right if you guys believe this way, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Justin, how about you?
I think he's kind of going like, you've got nothing to lose. He might as well try to fix it, and he's going to try to do what he can, because he knows, he knows what his situation is, and if he don't have Eleanor to help him, or anyone else to help him, he's just like, whatever happens, happens. He's just trying to see if he can try to put something right. But he kind of goes in there, he doesn't seem like he has a care in the world, or, he's worried about anything at all. Right? It just seemed like he just didn't really care. He was going for it.
Son, how about you?
The big thing to me in all of this was his refusal to fight. And I think that's something that's missed on both sides of any of these arguments going on today. Is that when you refuse to fight, you're often demonized by both sides as not taking a side, even though he was clearly taking a side. But he refused to fight. He acknowledged his own mistake to the people he had injured. And although he was not in the place to correct it then and there, he was still offering an apology for what he had done. And what the other side wanted was blood. And he said, no, I will not give you blood. I'm not here to give you blood. I'm not here to fight to the death. I am here to say that I'm sorry, that I screwed up, that the things I did in my life were wrong. and that I should have done them better, and I am trying to make them better. But that's the problem with extremism, is that you don't hear anymore. You stop listening. You stop listening when you start screaming. And in a lot of ways, what we talk about with Romulans being very passionate in their actions, that is a kind of screaming. It's an emotional screaming. It's a very physical screaming, not from the throat or anything. But if your actions are to push violence, you're screaming at someone that you want blood by trying to force a sword into their hand. And when you start screaming, you're not listening anymore. And I think a lot of people forget that. And I think a lot of people are upset that, I think a lot more people are upset these days that there are people who want to listen instead of be on a side and scream at the other side. So I look at that. I look at the opening scene of that fight sequence as a very powerful rebuke of not only just one side but both sides of this divide we've increasingly made by saying, "Would you just listen to me? No, I'm not going to fight you. No, I'm not going to get into a screaming match. Just listen to what I have to say." While the other side is basically going, "No, I don't want to listen. You've hurt me. You've injured me. I want blood. I want revenge. You are #canceled."
Up, we lost Ross.
Uh-oh.
Is
Well,
he still hosting?
No.
It looks
Nope.
like we're sport.
Looks like he dropped.
Oh, we killed Ross.
Killed him. We killed him with our words.
No. Oh, well, this is why I'm recording.
The pen is much, much mightier than the sword.
We
Because
have
the
lost
pen
our
can
host.
write words.
This time it's
Yeah.
much, much mightier than the Ross.
Poor Ross.
We're gonna try and get back, or
Well, he should be able to come back in as soon as he fixes whatever got broke. I think he was looking for our prediction sheet. There he is.
there he is.
Welcome back. You went bye-bye.
Yeah. Cat here pressed the power button on my computer. Just a little button that's right on the top, just takes a little press. And in my efforts to keep it from hitting that button, it hit the button.
Yes, I love it. I love it. It's such a joy being a cat owner.
Hilarious.
So that means Twitch is down, and probably the VOD is ruined. Son, did you finish your thought?
Yes, I did.
Okay. I think that this was not just for our benefit, but also for Elnor's benefit. There it is. To demonstrate the desperation of his cause. Here he was trying to appeal to those who would disagree with him in a very visceral way. And an attempt by him to appeal to others, and then a demonstration on what kind of opposition he was against. And Elnor, seeing that opposition, seeing him in danger, decided, all right, this is the cause that I can bind my blade to.
But see, I think
It's everything that you said it is.
Right. I understand, but see, that's the problem that I have, and I think I've seen a lot of people have with this portion of it. Aside from the social implications of this conversation, this conflict, why? How does Picard even know that Elnor is even watching?
Because Elnor's always watching when he's there.
I mean, maybe, but, you know, do you see what I'm getting at, though? It's like, if this was meant to provoke a reaction out of Elnor, why? I mean, it's not like, I mean, we see young Elnor always there, always watching Picard. What's to say that an adult Elnor who has been abandoned by Picard for so long would continue to pay that attention to him?
Because he knows he's leaving. He may never see him again, so he wants to see him off from the shadows.
Maybe.
Maybe, but I don't see it. I just don't.
Well, it's not
Nor
bad.
is.
It's
Go
not a
ahead.
bad theory. I mean, it's one of the better ones I've heard. I would have to, think it's certainly possible because, I mean, clearly Picard was putting on a show like he really, didn't care. Or he was trying to get someone to come to his aid, whether it was one of the sisters or Eleanor himself. I mean, he was in a desperate move because he already had him locked on with the transporter, so they could pull him out at a moment's notice if need be. And yeah, it just, I don't know. Like I said, it just felt like a weird thing. It felt almost like he was staging it just so Eleanor could come in and save the day.
You know what would make this scene make more sense to me in that respect, Ross?
What's that?
Is that if we found out there is a piece on the cutting room floor of some Romulan running off to the monastery to say, hey, there's a problem, we need the police. Then Elnor comes to see that it's Picard doing this. Because Elnor just shows up and it's awkward as hell.
Well, unless they show something where they have him in the background watching it.
The last scene we see of Elnor prior to this is him very much angry with Picard, saying, like, I have no reason not to leave you on your own as you did me all those years ago.
Rebuking him.
Yeah, which makes it really weird that he just suddenly shows up.
Well, he's essentially a teenager, right?
He's a moody teenager is what the show calls him, or describes him as, the people, or at least the actor. That's what the actor describes him as.
Yeah, this is about as young a Romulan we've seen since Datan in Reunification. And if they're as passionate as they say, just imagine how they are in puberty. That's a terrifying thought.
Boy.
Oh my God! Could you imagine if Vulcans are bad? Ooh.
So Elrond and the scientist are going to get it on.
I see the EMH getting some use there.
Oh, brother.
Oh, that's just no.
There's a reason it's called the emergency hospitality.
No.
I'll take the glasses off for that one.
Hold on.
Computer, activate the emergency DOM hologram. So, Elnor shows up out of nowhere to protect Picard, announcing to all present that he is now sworn to Picard as Colin Kai, and
and he gives the guy an ultimatum.
Yeah, step away or die.
Live.
Choose
to live.
Choose to live.
And then we see a decapitation.
Awesome.
Decapitation!
Off with head.
And even though it wasn't like overly gory, there was it was kind of really gory without being blood and guts everywhere, wasn't it?
It was visceral, but not gory. It was very, very samurai film-ish, I'd say.
And this is where I have to let it out for Elnor right here. This is why I really really like this character. In this moment where he announces to the crowd, like, I am, how do you
Colin
say
Kai.
it? I am this guy's Colin Kai. Colin Kai. You have to really think that this is a show that has introduced a lot of characters that have a lot of self-interests in their mindset. Raffi has no interest in joining Picard. She just wants to get to Free Cloud and do whatever she wants to do. Rios is literally a pilot for hire. He's just there for whatever currency or whatever he's getting from Picard, or
Barrels and barrels of Chateau Picard.
that he's
2273.
Now. Girardi doesn't have self-interest so much, I would say, more than she's more curious about potentially finding this flesh and blood android. And
well, not just the flesh and blood android, her literal better at Daystrom.
This is a quest to find her purpose again. She spent the last 14 years as a lead scientist in a field that she can't participate in. She can only do theoretical computer simulation. She can't build anything. She can't make anything. She can't do what she spent a lifetime training to do.
Yeah,
we're trying to find that again.
And I mentioned a few days ago that I love this cast of characters because I'm getting a very Guardians of the Galaxy vibe from it all. A lot of people are saying, like, I'm getting Firefly or whatever. I'm getting Guardians of the Galaxy vibes from it just because, like, this is a ragtag group of people. They don't exactly like each other too much, but they work well together, and their chemistry is great. In comes Elnor, and he casts aside all self-interest and says, Picard's interests are now my interests. I am binding myself to his quest, to his cause, and will obey him without second thought. And
so you're saying he's the Groot to Picard's rocket?
Oh, no.
Well, no, because even then...
But it's very much like I found it as a very refreshing take on the whole chemistry of our main cast, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I find it very ironic that a Romulan, of all things, is very much displaying an idealist. Well, I don't know if I want to call it idealistic, but he feels very Starfleet for a Romulan, and I absolutely love it. I cannot guys praise enough to the mountaintops. I cannot wait to see how he develops as a character right now.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing more of Elnor as well. So as soon as
I have to say though, my favorite thing out of that is the end, because I mean, I would have written it differently. The way it was written was well done, but I would have written it slightly differently. You bitches got a problem with Picard, you got a problem with me.
Immediately followed by swords and pretty words ain't matched for a disruptor, sister boy. And they beam out promptly.
I had a good chuckle at that.
Yeah, that was a pretty funny scene. It could have been done maybe just a little differently, but I love the way they just beamed out right there. Ow!
And Rafi's like a boy with a stick.
And I correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the Romulans on Vashti were of a similar type. They all looked like they had the northern ridges, with the exception of Elnor and the sisters.
There were a few that I saw that didn't really have the ridges. There were actually a few that reminded me of Vulcans from the Science Academy in the 2009 movie.
Yeah, that one.
I want to say that I really want to say that what we see of the people on Vashti were probably the more well-off Romulans. Because, I mean, you had the senator, for sure.
Yeah.
But in any society that is facing a doom, the people who have the money are going to be the first to try and get the hell out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you almost got Vulcan-looking Romulans here.
So I don't think Vashti was a planet just of an entire mix of Romulan societies. I think it was the start of the rich and upper classes of Romulan society, especially considering how little it was for Romulan evacuees. It was like what did they say? 500 at most, 500,000 Romulans.
And there's more than one settlement on the planet.
Right. I mean, we're talking about a planet that probably had billions on it.
Mm-hmm.
I know that the Kolat Milat were responsible for helping to relocate about 250,000, so roughly 250,000. That was the highest number I heard, but I could have missed a number.
So they return to the La Serena, and the first thing Picard does is rebuke Elnor. That man did not deserve his eye. That was powerful. Oh.
Yeah.
That was a very, very serious Picard. More serious than I've seen him in the show so far.
That was Picard being Picard again.
Mm-hmm. That was the first. That's the first duty speech Picard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm probably thinking a little too. I think I'm probably overthinking what that scene might mean. With all this talk about, how these Romulans represent extremists and symbolize these particular groups of people. I think a lot of us potentially, like when dealing with neo-Nazis and whatnot, a lot of us very much have this mindset of, I'd like to, kick their ass. I'd like to, the only good Nazi is a dead Nazi. I think a lot of people forget that these are still human beings and they can change. Mm-hmm. And, whenever I see a news story about a neo-Nazi who has realized the error of his ways, has gone out of his way to get help, I applaud organizations like Life After Hate for doing this kind of thing. And I think this scene might be telling us, like, hey, these are human beings too, and they do need help. And I get so disheartened when I hear so much of this sentiment of I just wish these Nazis would fuck right off or go right to hell and rot there, and I want to kill them all. It very much it's what Sun was going off on earlier. It's like there's very much these two sides that are in a screaming match, and I think Picard was very much the voice of reason there. Like, hey, that man didn't deserve it.
And it's an echo of what Picard said in the first episode when he was in the interview, when he said that there were millions of lives at risk, Romulan lives. No, lives. All lives matter to Picard, be they human, Romulan, or whatever. And to see a life taken so callously disturbs and infuriates.
Oh God, Ross, don't say that. They're going to call Picard right wing. All lives matter.
I've had this argument many, many times.
Oh God, I know, and it's exhausting every single time, isn't it?
Yeah.
I got into
But
it. Twitter
I understand the
post
reasoning
on it.
behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why it being said by certain individuals, it not relevant to this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's move right along.
Yes. So
I do want to say though, Travis, that what you're talking about with the life after hate, one of the people that I look up to, that I want to emulate when I talk to people, that I try to emulate, is Daryl Davis, who is a musician who has himself personally converted 300 plus former Klansmen, and he's a black man.
just by befriending them.
Yeah, just by befriending them and talking to them. He actually wound up converting one of the heads of the Klan in the state that he was living by befriending him, to the point that the guy would actually drive around with Daryl Davis in his car, and they'd have a conversation back and forth. And the conversation that went on in that instance was that the Klan leader guy was talking about genetic predisposition for criminal violence in black people and all that kind of stuff that you hear over and over and over again. And Daryl Davis, being the smooth operator he is, flips it back onto the guy by saying, well, then there's a genetic predisposition for white people to all be serial killers, isn't there? And yours is just dormant. It's not active yet. And he says he's sitting there in the car, and the guy gets real quiet, and you can sit there as those wheels start clicking, because he's dismissed this argument, but it's the same argument he's been making about black people. And yeah, there's this, the way Picard portrays this, this conversation, he did not need to die. There is still hope for these people to get through to them. They are still beings that have rational thought. And all of this built up hate and anger and resentment can be broken through if you just try.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really powerful to me. And I think a lot of people easily dismissed it as, oh, Picard's being Picard again. Because it is a straight continuation of the previous two actions that we've had out of Picard. Breaking the barrier of segregation, and then standing up to people who are screaming by saying, I'm not going to.
All right.
Okay.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So Elnor is introduced to the crew. Rafi, oh, the boy with the stick. Kind of dismissing him offhand. And then things start to get hairy as the warlord and his bird of prey have arrived, and immediately starts shooting with no preamble, no warning, no opening hail, no bluster or anything. Just, oh, look, a ship. I'm going to kill it.
We do have a little scene in between with the agent and his sister, love interest, or whatever is going on there.
I thought that was the last scene.
It was right before this.
Before the fight between the bird of prey and the lost. I can't say the lost.
I guess we got to cover that then.
Probably already did.
I've been pretty over the moon about most of this series, but the interactions between Rizzo and Narek, it does get a little grating for the reason Sun said before, is because she's just so impatient, and her impatience is what caused the problems in the first place. Mm-hmm. Is the reason why Picard is on this quest now. She doesn't know it, but Rizzo's her own worst enemy, and everything she's doing is running counter to it, and she doesn't see it. It's like she just enjoys being the antagonist too much. She's her own worst enemy. And she's flirting with her brother again.
Choking.
And then she turns it around and turns it into a death threat.
I really hope she gets what's coming to her relatively soon, because she is a character I cannot stand.
I really hope not. Because you remember what Commodore O said? It's like
That she would...
that if she failed again, basically she was making a threat against the brother. If Rizzo failed again, she would not only take out Rizzo, she'd be taking out everything that and everyone that she vouched for, including her brother. So I really hope at some point Rizzo just gets shoved into a locker, bound, and not messed with for a couple of months, so she starves to death.
And or an alternative, I would be happy if she's spaced, either which way.
Now, the question that does come up with this is Narek. He seems to sympathize with Soji a little bit.
I've noticed that too, because I really think, and we can put this on a debunker if you want, I don't know. I don't think he's all adamant about destroying her.
I think he is, but I also think he's kind of he's not necessarily becoming invested in her. I think he's becoming invested in the mystery. He wants to know the same questions that she's asking. He wants to find out the same answers that she's looking for, in addition to looking for the answers that he is. So
it's there. We actually have this we've had this with the Romulans before, where the Tal Shiar will have an understanding of their operations, but you have like the low-level Romulans who are carrying out the bidding of the Tal Shiar without even realizing they're doing it. And so you have this mystery that comes up that even the Romulans themselves are like, this is curious. Let's follow these strings. And then when it leads back to the Tal Shiar, it's like, oh. and suddenly the Romulans cloak and disappear.
Never to be heard from again.
So I think that's what we see going on.
Or whatever.
What's that?
What was it? The Admiral Jirok or whatever that one episode was in The Next Generation.
Vector, yes.
Yeah, there we go. That's the one. That was also part of a game, I think, The Final Unity. If I remember correctly, that was part of the storyline.
There was a lot of Romulan intrigue in The Final Unity, yeah. Also a bit of Romulan cousin with Garrett. But Narek is becoming more interesting to me. Rizzo is becoming less so.
I can see that, yeah. I do like that Narek is starting to get emotionally torn as far as where his loyalties might lie. I mean, when Rizzo leaves his quarters at the end of this scene, you could see him very much, banging his head against the wall, just like, what do I do from here? That kind of thing.
I think that frustration is more from Rizzo's deadline that he just gave her. Narek seems pretty adept at the long game, the long con. He knows how to play the game. He plays it well. Rizzo just doesn't. She's a blunt instrument. And I think that's the reason Commodore O doesn't like him as much, because he plays that long game. He's more adept at the variables that come with it, while Rizzo is, okay, here's the mission, here's the plan, do it, go home, beers. Or Romulan ale. So, anyone else have any more thoughts on the scene?
I wish they'd get to that point a lot more quickly, honestly. Get to that point quicker. I don't want to spend the next 3 episodes still wondering what the hell is going on with the Borg cube and have another story that's actually worse than the love story in Twilight. I'll be completely honest. The love story in Twilight is a better story than what's going on right here, right now. It's a love story.
This isn't a love story.
Son. I don't think this one sparkles. I think you're okay. I don't think this one sparkles.
Did you not see each other's eyes light up when they kissed after skating on the board floor?
I tried to ignore that scene because it was sheer.
All that was two people who are so bound up in the tension that any kind of relief is a joy.
Yes.
That is a very high tension, high risk, high stress environment. So anything that's even remotely, fractionally fun is a huge relief.
For what it's worth, it's still better than Sub Rosa.
This is true. Oh my God.
Oh my God.
So true.
Oh my God. Why did you bring up Sub Rosa? Oh my God.
All right. So
fucking ghost.
Oh my God.
And now for the fight scene. The bird of prey has arrived. There's no preamble. There's no gloating. There's no "and now you are mine" kind of speech. The bird of prey just opens up, and Rios is back in action, and we get probably my favorite emergency hologram of all of them, Emmett, the emergency tactical hologram, and he speaks Spanish the whole time. It's just a back and forth in Spanish, and it's awesome.
Well, he does drop one English phrase, like, nah, too risky.
Yeah.
I have got to say, I freaking love the bird of prey in this.
Yes.
Oh my God. It is so nice to actually see this thing again. And they did it justice.
And it's a 1-to-1.
I mean,
there's the decal, there's the bird of prey on the bottom of it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they added the green lights to the wing, but you know what? I can live with that because it's awesome.
I love the runner lights. Come on, be honest.
Oh my God, it's Romulan. It's Romulan. This is, I mean, this looks more Romulan than the damn Klingon ships did in Discovery.
This is a 1-to-1. There ain't no 25% bitches.
I mean, and this fight scene, this is something out of Expanse almost. I mean, the physics. I mean. That's what this
Go ahead.
reminds me of. That's what this crew reminds me of. It's a crew from Expanse.
I love how the holograms track with Rios as he moves, and the way he's piloting with his hand the whole time. Just Riker, eat your heart out with your dumbass joystick.
And the way the hologram comes in, just like whatever.
There is. Sorry.
And then the way the hologram just pops in right at the start of the fight, we're like, yeah, whatever, I'm here.
I love how the hologram is like this hungover, drunk kind of character who's just sitting there and firing weapons as they go.
What happened to shooting? I do. I guess I got to bring up. There is on Ross's note with the holograms moving with the hand. I remember a line from DS9's episode "The Visitor" in the future when they're on the Defiant. They're like, "Man, it's been so long since we've had these 2D panels." Just like that's all I was thinking about when I was seeing this like vast, like holographic orange display right in front of Rios. I'm just like, hey, the future is now.
Yes. And as the battle's heating up, they've taken a few hits. They're outmaneuvering the thing, but they can't outrun it. Yes. Out of nowhere, unmarked, unregistered, unidentifiable, is this sleek little needle of a ship that, what do you guys think? Looks a little bit like the Delta Flyer?
I've heard that comparison. I have no idea what to call it. If anything, I thought it looked a little bit like a very small Klingon Discovery ship, believe it or not.
To me, it looked like the Delta Flyer just stretched out a little bit.
There is one problem that I had with the fight scene before we get this other character involved, and that is the the two birds, the bird of prey is pushing the ship closer and closer to the planetary defense grid,
Mm-hmm.
and in this, the way it seems, or the way it's said in the acting, is completely different from how it's portrayed on the screen. Because the way it's acted, it seems like Rios is going to shove the engines to throw himself at the defense grid and stop and pull back at the last minute so that the bird of prey slams into it. But that never happens. They just pull on the brakes and then just start skidding along the surface and fighting from just above the defense grid. And I thought that was weird to me. Did anybody else notice that, or am I just crazy?
It was kind of hard to track. There was a lot going on at once, and I don't know. It seemed to me it sounded like that the bird of prey was trying to push them in towards the grid.
Right.
That's
That's what I'm
them.
saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The bird of prey was trying to push Rios and them into the planetary defense grid so that the planetary defense grid would simply obliterate them. And the way it comes across, it seems like Rios is taking a further and further lead on the bird of prey to get the bird of prey to come in closer, to pull itself in faster, so that when he says stop and pulls on the brakes, they don't hit the planetary defense grid, but the bird of prey would. But that doesn't happen.
It's a curious scene.
Damn it, Justin, you spoiled the surprise.
Well, if you're watching the episode, it's not a surprise, but if you're watching this, you expect spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of let that go too long, Justin.
I know.
So-
I didn't
so-
stop it in time.
We get our weird little ship that comes in and then almost instantly shears off an entire nacelle from the bird of prey.
It is an older ship. Might have been retrofitted, but under enough fire.
I imagine that even 23rd century like hull plating is no match for near 25th century weaponry.
Well, that and looks like both ships concentrated their fire on the same point.
Yeah, they did.
Interesting. A half nacelled bird of prey stranded in space.
But the other ship, it got a lucky shot off on the smaller ship. It took damage, went plummeting towards the planet. Everybody made a very big show of saying he, talking about the pilot of the other ship.
Mm-hmm.
Picard accidentally gives an order and backs off to let Rios do his thing.
I chuckle at that.
Hey,
And then of course we see the typical Star Trek trope of the ship disintegrates before they have the pattern in the buffer to beam the person aboard, to create drama that we already know is not going to exist.
It's fun tension, and it's fun to poke at it.
And then off steps Seven of Nine and goes, "Did you just assume my gender?"
And then the third best line of the episode: "You owe me a ship, Picard." Kerthunk.
I am not
Scene.
that I let out a literal geek out scream when we saw her. Like, I was sitting with two of my roommates when we were watching this. Like, just like people who are not Star Trek geeks like I am.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as she was on the screen, I was just like, "Wah!"
And this is the first time they've met each other.
And Picard's like, 7 of 9?
I mean, he was literally still a captain when Voyager came back.
Yep.
So he would know. He was technically still the captain of the flagship of the Federation when Voyager came back.
She's the second most famous XB in the galaxy.
The other one being Hugh.
The other one being Picard, a.k.a. Locutus.
Cutest of Borg. I don't know if I'd call Picard an XB. Maybe.
I would, because he was most certainly fully assimilated.
Yeah, but I know he was fully assimilated and all. He just has like 0 scars from it. Maybe I'm just
Can
thinking too.
can we call him a BT, a Borg thing?
Well, he doesn't have anything left because, well, maybe Crusher is a better doctor than the Doctor.
Well, no. That the thing is that most of the when so okay, this is getting into weird metaphysical medical shit, but
Dude, to make it a
I
long story.
have a family history in medical stuff, and when you have implants and all that kind of stuff, like, and I'm not talking about like technological implants like we see here in Picard. I mean like prosthetics and all that kind of stuff. The longer you have that prosthetic, the harder it is for the body to recover from it. Like say if you get a pacemaker put in, your body gets used to that space where the pacemaker is and accommodates for it. So if your heart actually winds up becoming strong again and you no longer need that pacemaker, you're still going to have that space in your chest where that pacemaker used to be. In much the same way, the technology of the Borg, one would think, becomes adapted to the human body, and because Picard wasn't even a Borg for a week, he was liberated and pretty much was still Picard, whereas Seven of Nine has been a Borg since a child.
All right, we're running late on time. We gotta wrap this up. So it's time for the SmackDown.
Oh no!
And I am perfectly equipped for it. So
Carlos already smacked down the only prediction I gave.
let's start with let's take it from the top. Sean's Narek loves Rizzo. Lightning round. Yes, no, hell no. Travis.
Probably.
Justin.
We'll see. The jury's still out.
Son.
Jury's definitely still out. I don't think they gonna fuck, but a lot of the tension leads to they gonna fuck.
I think Rizzo loves herself more.
I mean,
And she does it as a power play.
Wait. Repeat. You say Rizzo and Narek lovers?
Yes. Brother and sister.
I'm gonna say no. I hope not.
Yeah, this is. I don't think this is a Lannister situation. She just does it for the power play. All right. From Joe, Maddox created Dodge and Soji from a bit of data that survived Nemesis.
We're gonna have to find this out next week.
Yeah, that's next.
Jury's still out.
Yeah.
Jury's still out.
Well, it had to come from somewhere.
Uh-huh.
Probably.
I mean, I still go. Somehow, lore was brought into play because of the simple fact that we have the sisters, good and evil. I mean, Data was good. There was no evil in Data, so I mean, the evil had to come.
Unless he was infected by lore in the Descent.
True, or it's part of the port. So I mean, we got plenty of possibilities where it comes to either lore or the Borg.
Okay, so we're sticking with wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking, yes.
All right, from Sean and Son, Juliana, Data's mom, could be the source of the neurons.
No, okay, yeah, no, we fixed this. We fixed this.
Yeah, that one says SmackDown, so
yeah,
SmackDown. From Sean, Maddox had enough of Data to try and reconstruct him.
Possibly.
Maybe.
I think we all agree that's what's going on. That Maddox is trying to rebuild Data.
Who should say that Maddox didn't get a copy of Data at one point, or Data didn't send a copy to Maddox for safekeeping at one point? I mean,
he had to have something of Data. We know that much,
right?
So
I mean, they were in close correspondence. We know that from episodes in the Next Generation. So it's quite possible that Data did send him a backup copy of himself in case something were to happen. Possible, maybe.
All right. My theory: more political intrigue between Romulans and Feds re AI. I'm gonna pull this back a bit
You are?
because,
I thought this was a duh situation.
well, yeah, it's a
Yeah.
duh, but here's my revision of this. We're not seeing a lot of Starfleet anymore. Since I think with the characters that we're seeing, with the ideas that we're seeing with the Fenris Rangers,
Mhm.
with these fringe movements, we're not going to be seeing a whole lot of Starfleet going forward. So I think the intrigue is going to be outside Starfleet.
I
I'm
don't
going
think.
to disagree with that
Yeah.
because the Admiral Clancy, she very much she has a bit of an agenda that she doesn't want Picard going out and causing trouble. And I imagine that she's going to enter the picture further on down the line
All
to
right.
potentially.
I gotta agree with you there because it's kind of maybe this was a bigger cover up than even it that's being hinted at, and lots of higher ups in Starfleet in order to keep Picard from finding out the information. That's also why they let him go so easily, and I really think we're going to be seeing some pretty unstarfleet Starfleet type stuff going on.
Yeah, I agree. There should be no revision here, Ross, because we are seeing Starfleet at the core of all of this.
All right. Then I take it
Clandestine.
back and I'll stick with
These
my.
these clandestine operations are being written off by who? Commodore O.
Yeah.
Of what? Starfleet.
Starfleet.
Even though we know O's an agent, he's still part of Starfleet for the time being. So therefore, it kind of counts, I would think.
I mean, let's be
Okay.
honest. That's the whole thing of Rafi. Rafi says there's a conspiracy within the Federation, and she has the proof.
All right, then I retract what I just said and stick with my original theory. All right, Romulans have Picard's DNA and activated his terminal disease. Current status is out of left field. Do we stick with that?
Yes, it's still out of left field, but it's definitely something Romulans would do.
I mean, I don't know.
At least the Tal Shiar.
I'm gonna thumbs down that one hard.
All right.
I would say out on left field with a side of Q.
All right, next one from Sun. Maddox created a failsafe activation for Daj and Soji. I think we already saw that in episode 1. Also, we have the program of their mother.
Yeah, Carlos didn't post an updated SmackDown list, did he?
No.
Well,
this is last week's SmackDown list because we've updated since then.
Okay.
Yeah,
Carlos, you're grounded.
Carlos has an excuse. He's not here and working on very, 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 very poor internet.
Yes.
Next one. Juliana is still around.
Yes, that was Sean's, and that is still probable.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see her or not. Kind of doubt it.
We might
need to watch the episode again, but I'm gonna say probably not.
Well, it's only been about 20 years or so.
Because she was supposed to continue her life as normal until the day she died.
Yeah. All right, so speculation, yeah or nay?
Possible.
Okay.
Speculation. 7 of 9 is part of the Fenris Rangers.
All right, moving on then.
No.
Let's see. Next one says from Justin Q. Status speculation. SmackDown Fenwank.
Thumbs down on that one.
Fenwank. Yep.
Well, we've seen a glove in the picture. That's the same thing that we've seen
Not
in
this
the
early.
courtroom.
Like, I wouldn't be surprised if Q maybe eventually appears in the series, but not this early on. Like,
Oh,
definitely
no, it
not.
won't be early. It ain't going to be early. It'll be later on.
Yeah, no, my favorite thing was the big fan wake thing is that Q shows up at the end of this series and says, "Hey, Picard, want
You're
to come to
dead.
the Continuum?"
Oh God,
No,
I would
I think
no.
my
Good
thinking
God.
this is still part of humanity's trial. It's just like in all good things, and Q is trying to help Picard along the best way he can, like showing him the flashbacks and just trying to help him along the best way that he in Q fashion, and we're going to see him pop in at some point in some fashion. I mean, it's his style.
All right, next one from Justin, the Traveler.
Oh God,
No.
Whenever
that one we smacked down last week and
Yeah.
hard.
The
We
Traveler.
love
Boom.
Then.
The real only reason why I bring up the Traveler was Crusher and the fact that he's hosting the after show.
I can live without seeing Wesley Crusher in the show.
I think we all can.
All right, a lot of these really don't apply so much to this episode. Borg were created by Vulcan Romulan split.
I'll be the lone voice on this one and say I don't really agree with this one on Carlos's end. My fish are going crazy right now. I'm after watching this episode, I feel like it's a different tone than what this prediction would probably be going for, if that makes any sense.
I'm with you. Justin, son?
Yeah, I mean,
It's still a possibility, considering the Borg have always been the biggest, baddest threat to the galaxy, at least for the Alpha and Beta quadrants. And
as far back as to Discovery, that.
but at the same time, there's like a bajillion other things that could be. What if, like I said earlier, what if this is some kind of allusion to demons of air and darkness being mechanical beings?
Huh.
Iconians?
Yes.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about that, and you mentioned it earlier, and it's been kind of just sticking in the back of my head. What if this is Iconian? I mean, the demons. Well, what if you found Iconian technology in order to create Dodge?
See,
All right.
the big problem I have with all of this, with the Borg angle or maybe an Iconian angle, the problem I have with all of it is Ramda herself. Just Ramda. In all of this, the problem I have is Ramda. Because she, and I'm going to keep using this word even though I know it's wrong, she is this Romulan mythicist. And she goes on about this culture. She goes on about this destroyer. And then the moment Soji shows up to interview her, she already knows that Soji is the destroyer. How? How does she know that Soji is an artificial life form?
The ship that was from the future.
It's a mystery.
I mean, and even if the explanation is the Borg have the sum of collection of all of this knowledge in the galaxy, how does the Borg know that Soji, a character who nobody has apparently ever seen or known outside of the Tal Shiar's clandestine operations through the Federation, knows that this Chica is an artificial life form?
I think
how does the Borg know?
Hang on. I think what
Here's an idea.
Out that the ship was from the future that got assimilated.
Here's an idea. The cube is still active. It's separated from the collective, but it is still active. It's still operating. That's why it's dangerous. That's why they have the badges. The drones are all in stasis because of the cube's status, but it is still there and it's still alive.
You're right.
And the Romulans who are assimilated, the reason that their minds are kind of gone is because they're still connected to that cube. Kind of linking to my theory that that it was disabled by something that was in them and in their ship. They're linked to the cube. They caused it to go down. So what the ship sees, they see.
I can get behind that.
Yeah, okay, I could see that, especially if the cube's command would be stasis. That would literally
Well-
shut off parts of their brain, wouldn't it?
We
Mhm.
already also
Okay.
know these 4 cubes have temporal beacons because of their transport drives. So
That might not have anything to do. Maybe. We'll see.
If
Again,
something
this
were to
is
happen.
this is why I say the problem is Rhonda, because she keeps talking about these events like they're going to happen.
Well, that's why I
You
said
know,
either she was on the
like-
ship that came.
Well, see, that's the thing. When she talks to Soji, she says Soji is the destroyer and will destroy.
Right. Well,
Now,
that's why.
this was a Romulan end time myth, but how do you know it's Soji?
Well, that's why I
Because of the
say
cube.
either the cube, like Ross says, or the ship that got assimilated somehow come from the future. I mean, either one of them is a possibility.
They,
at this
they
point.
couldn't have come from the future
Why not?
because they were in a
It-
contemporary Romulan ship.
Yeah,
Besides-
but if something were to happen, if
Everyone
something-
knows that Vulcan science directorates determined time travel is impossible.
All right, we're running late, so let's move on.
Yes.
I've already touched on. I've linked my theory to that one, so we can skip that.
Mhm.
That the Romulans caused the ship to be disabled. For me, Maddox is not alone. He's working with others who have an agenda that Daj and Soji were looking for.
Yes, we all still, well, for the most part, we all still agree with that. What do you think, Travis?
I'd say that's pretty viable. Yeah, Maddox not
agree.
alone there.
We're definitely going to get some kind of answer tomorrow or next week, I hope.
Yeah,
I hope so.
I think so too. I wish it was tomorrow.
All right. Dr. Louis Zimmerman may be working with Maddox.
Louis Zimmerman.
The
The
image creator.
The image creator. I think that's possible. I mean,
He
ho-
should
Well,
be still-
with
he
all
should-
the emergency holograms that are on the La Serena,
Oh,
Well, he should be. He should still be alive.
he should be, yeah.
if not in
Uh,
hologram form.
I don't know if this theory has any weight to it. It might not happen this season, especially with Robert saying that he's being approached for season 2. So maybe later on.
Raffi seeks vindication via Maddox on Free Cloud.
Yes.
We're all still for that?
Mm.
Oh yes, most
yeah.
definitely.
Vindication.
Because it's a whole reason why she went.
Raffi is going to Free Cloud solely to put the final pieces together that she needs
Oh,
for her Federation conspiracy.
I can see where you're.
Because she thinks that Maddox knows what happened. That's why he left.
Because why else would Maddox squirrel away all of this android tech and then make human androids?
I can see where you're going with this. Sure, I can buy that one.
All right. And last one, Commander O's final words will be her name.
I
See,
think
that was
you're-
worth it just
wow.
watching Travis laugh. That was
Yes,
enjoyable.
yes, I love that
Well,
one. Who come
I'm
up
glad-
with that?
Be enjoyable.
All right. Travis, do you have any theories to pose after tonight's or this episode?
Well, I actually posted a small prediction on the group, which Carlos immediately smacked down. This one, I think he slightly misunderstood where I was coming from. I went out on a limb and put out a benign prediction, and I said that I have a feeling that we might be seeing cloaked Federation starships.
I saw that.
And the reason I brought
Ooh.
this up is because, again, the Federation is not very fond of Picard acting on his own accord right now. Is making moves to hinder him or stop him. And again, with the Romulan Star Empire likely out of the picture and the Treaty of Alderaan, which initially forbid the Federation from making this cloaking technology, probably obsolete right now. They'd probably be, dipping their toes in the water and getting a little controversial, especially since they've been getting very controversial already. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I mean, like, if it happens, I will very happily say, I told you, Carlos.
Now, see, here's the thing. If he immediately smacked this down, then he wasn't paying attention to being here last episode, because that was part of the speculation that I brought up with Rios's last ship, the ship that he was second in command of. What if the incident that saw his captain bloodied and in pieces in his own hands was another Pegasus incident?
This is what
That's
he
good.
said to me. He said, I would definitely smack you down for that one, Travis. This isn't a show about the kinds of starships allowed under treaties. If anything, all the ships we've seen have been old retreads, and I like it that way. And that's where I kind of think that I don't think you get where I'm coming from, Carlos. I'm not saying that it's about ships under treaties. It's me saying the Federation is disregarding something that, is just.
Well, I mean, we saw, good things.
Their controversial self.
Well,
but I really fun Chernobyl gif, so happiness all around.
With no Romulan Empire, no Treaty of Alderaan,
I mean, we
free cloaking devices.
Yeah, we saw it all good things.
And how much of a jaw-dropping moment would that be if? Now I'm going into a little fan wank here, but what if the ship that is sent after him is Admiral Clancy on the Enterprise E that drops out of cloak in front of the La Serena?
It would be quite the jaw-dropper moment, and yeah, it is a little bit of a fan wank.
What if
which
it's
is
not the E?
Name ships, but I would hold that one over Carlos for a while. Just
what if it's, dang it, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to keep stepping on you. Just wait a minute.
You're fine.
What if it's not the E but the Enterprise F?
Because we have seen the Odyssey in the comics.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the E would be more iconic and a more effective slap in the face to Picard.
Sure.
So,
Unless that she shows up on the Verity.
No. She shows up. She shows up in a Galaxy Dreadnought with that third nacelle.
That drops it on Carlos right there. I know.
That would be hilarious.
If it was just a retread of that scene from All Good Things.
Well, hey, then it would meet all of his criteria because it's a retread of another ship.
Well,
there you go.
They did rebuild the Galaxy class ship for this show, so I mean, hey, why not?
All right, we're pretty well over time. We've got our SmackDown.
I do have the one speculation I'd like to add is that 7 of 9 is possibly one of the Fenris Rangers.
I believe some of the promotional material said that she was the
Yeah.
leader.
She already.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah. He already lost that one. Won that one.
Okay. Well, there you go.
All right, let's put a pin in this one, shall we? It's been a great episode. I had a lot of fun running herd on you guys. Travis, thank you for being here with us and filling in.
Always
glad to have you again. This has been the Make It Show Star Trek Picard After Show. Thank you guys so much for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.
Black alert.